Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited about today's video. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about adoption and how much that costs. A lot of times I hear people talk about adoption and they say, I can never do that because it costs too much. Or a lot of other excuses that they have. Adoption is pretty expensive if you want it to be, or it could also be really cheap if you don't want it to be. My name is Winter, and I have 4 adopted children. I just recently adopted my last 2 a couple weeks ago. I adopted all 4 of my children out of foster care. I have a ton of friends that are also adoptive parents out of all different walks of life. They adopted them domestically through foster care. I've also seen them do through private foster care and also internationally. So tons of friends that I know. We talk about numbers sometimes about how much it took for them to adopt their children, etc. And also I have spent time overseas in Ukraine in orphanages over there, so I've seen families come and adopt children from special needs orphanages in Ukraine, and so I kind of have a good grasp on all these things, and that's my background story. So in the short of things, it's kind of funny. Adoption can cost anywhere between $0 and $40,000. It just depends on which route you take. And I'm going to go from the cheapest route to the most expensive route. Sorry, that was my daughter on the other side of the camera. She had to sneeze. So here we go. We're going to start with the cheapest route. And that's the route that my husband and I did. And that is through foster care. Foster care can cost anywhere between $0 and $2,000. And the biggest fee for adopting through foster care is the legal fees. So you have a lawyer that you pick and you hire, and they have to do the adoption order. They have to do all these things put together. You're basically paying for the lawyer to get everything, all the paperwork signed and good. So I saw that bill, and it cost about $1,400 for us in the state of South Dakota to adopt both of our kids. So it wasn't very much at all for 2 kids. We did the adoption at the same time, so it's a little bit of a, it was all the same paperwork, so it was really inexpensive. But the state of South Dakota actually paid for that $1,400 bill, and so we did not have to pay any money for our adoption. So that happened with our other 2 boys as well. It was about the same price, and we didn't have to pay any money for that adoption. I've heard it from costing around $1,500 to $2,000, maybe $2,500, depending on who you pick for your lawyer, how expensive they are. And yeah, that's super reasonable. People, sometimes have weird feelings about foster care because of the fact that it's hard to adopt a child through foster care sometimes, because they would have to be in the foster care system first, maybe have a few foster families before them, a little bit more emotional needs, things like that. Maybe that'd be a little older, but I have heard of people adopting infants, but they technically that child wouldn't be fully adopted until they're like 2 years old. It takes about 2 years, 3 years to get a child through the foster care system to adoption if they need to be adopted. The goal of foster care obviously is reunification, so that is the drawback of it, which is awesome. It's not a drawback, it's actually a good thing, but it's also a drawback if you're trying to adopt through the foster care system. The goal is reunification with its biological family. So they will always have preference, unless there's no one, and then you can adopt them. It happens all the time. I know a lot of people that adopt through foster care, and you can also register to become just a foster to adopt parent. So you don't have to go through any foster care at all. But also there's pluses and negatives to all that. So that's for another video. The next one is through a private adoption, private foster care adoption. These things can cost probably about $2,000. Sometimes your agency will tack on a fee, depends on if they're a nonprofit or not. Most adoption agencies are nonprofit, obviously, but that could be upwards. You can add an extra $5,000 potentially if you go through a private foster care agency. So there is that option as well. There is domestic adoptions, like in the United States, you can adopt somebody else's child, and it would be the same fees as through foster care. If someone gave up their rights of their child and they gave you their child, basically, it would cost about the same. There's other ways you can go. If you want to adopt a baby, you go through an agency. Typically those cost between $5,000 and $10,000 is what I hear. You basically will have to talk with that mother. You go through that situation. You can be as open with this adoption or as closed with adoption as you want, but you would have to make an agreement beforehand of like, am I going to pay for the hospital visits, the doctor visits? Do I just pay for the child, or do I pay for the biological mother as well? There's some interesting dynamics in there that are all negotiable depending on your foster care situation. Every single adoption is different because every person is different and every family gets formed differently. So costs can change depending on that. Other domestic adoptions, you can go through an agency and they can find you some children. I have a friend that adopted 2 siblings from Florida through an agent, and it cost around $9,000 for that adoption. So that was, and they live in South Dakota and they adopted from Florida. So that's kind of what that would cost for that one. And then the last one would be international adoptions, and I have a little experience with this one. We've been researching adopting from China for years and years and years, and that would cost anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000. I would say international adoptions could cost anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000, depending on where you adopt from. Typically, it's in that $30,000 range. You know, a lot of people have some beef about adopting from these countries because they feel like there's corruption and people are maybe stealing people's money, and it's kind of like purchasing children. I don't know necessarily where I feel about it. I just feel like these children need to be adopted at any price. I think it would be worth it either way. So, but you know, everyone's in a different place financially, and if you're like, I can't afford $30,000, which is possible, you know, you can always fundraise, and you know, lots of people want to support adoptions. I know of a friend, she's like, I can't wait till you adopt from China so that I can give you money to adopt from China, because they just really support and love children and they need homes. And so there's a lot of people with a heart for adoption that would love to support you in your journey. So anyways, that is the long and short of it. There's one thing I want to add on here at the end, and that is actually 2 things. The international adoption. If your child is from a different country, has special needs, typically like those like special needs children, they have a grant that comes with them. So you could take off a couple like $1,000 or $10,000 depending on their special need. They'll say on there's a grant for this child, and it will take off that money off of your adoption fees. So like that's kind of cool. In Ukraine, I know there's I worked in a special needs orphanage, and the children that were adopted from there were significantly cheaper to adopt than the children that didn't have any special needs. However sad that may be, it's kind of cool if you're looking for special needs children to adopt. It's a little cheaper to adopt them. Lastly, I want to talk about the tax credit. If you adopt a child for the next 5 years on your tax form, you will have a $13,570 tax credit that you can pull from. And this is only for expenses that you spent on the adoption itself. We have never used this tax credit because our adoptions were free. So we wouldn't need to use it because we didn't pay any money to adopt our children. So, but if you went to China and you adopted a child from China, you would totally use all that tax credit because it would be so expensive. So in reality, yeah, it's a $30,000 bill, but you get all that money back on your taxes. So like that's kind of cool. It's a cool benefit. Just pray that that never goes away for adoptive families and it just stays on there. I have a friend that adopted using this tax credit, and she did it like 4 times, and she just kept using the tax credit over and over again on each kid as she went to China to adopt. So it cost significantly less. She just kept reusing that $13,570 or whatever over and over again. Anyways, I hope that was very informative for you guys, and if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment below about adoption. Please, if you have a different experience about your adoption and how much it costs, please leave it in below so it'd be a good information source for people looking to adopt. We'll probably get a lot of traffic on this video about adoption, so just put your experience down below, and I would love to hear from you, and I know other people would too. So anyways, I hope you guys have the best day ever, and I'll see you next time. Bye!